Thank you so much, team, for coming along today. We are, of course, going to be talking about local water done well, but doing it as a joint group this morning. So I wonder, Gary, do you want to kick us off and let all of our audience who might be outside of the Waitaki district let us know who you are?
Sure thing, Tamer. I'm Gary Kircher, Mayor for Waitaki District. Is there anything else we need to say?
No, I reckon that's probably pretty good.
Hi everyone who's listening and watching at home. My name is Ben Bell. I am the Mayor of the beautiful Gore District.
Kia ora everyone, Brian Cadogan, 5th term Mayor of Clutha District.
Thanks, Brian. And I'm Tamer Ali, Mayor of Central Otago. And I guess what we want to kick off from the very start is right back to basics. Three Waters, thought we weren't doing that anymore.
No, that got scrapped with the previous government, so no longer Three Waters, they've changed the name, it's now Local Water Done Well. So what this government did when it came in is said instead of the 4 entities that the Labor government came up with, and then it was 10, they said, you know what, we're going to let councils decide what they want to do. And so we've taken that challenge on board. It originally started out with all of the Southland and Otago councils, and we're what's left.
And I want to touch on that because it's been all of my time on council and all of Ben's time, and you guys have been here a lot longer. A lot of our communities are saying, you've got to push back on the government. You've just got to say, no, we can't afford this. There's nothing wrong with our water. Leave it alone.
I think there's a push and pull, right? There's some things that we definitely should push back on the government, and there's other things that we shouldn't. And I mean, our community is really proud of the fact that we push back on the wastewater standards, and we've already saved 13 million if those go ahead. So that's a great win. However, this water service delivery plan the government's talking about, they've made it very clear that if we don't do it, they will do it for us. Now, I'd rather save the money, do it ourselves, rather than having a commissioner in, very, very expensive to come in and do my job for me. So I totally understand what your community is talking about. We get it down our way too. There are some times that we do need to push back on government, but I don't think this is one of them.
Yeah, and I think that's, like you highlighted, Gary, it's not about saying we want to do the bare minimum. It's about saying we want to do the best we can, recognising that there's a price to be paid for that, and there's a price that people can afford and a price that people can't afford, which I guess gets me onto that next question that we've been talking a lot. What does financial sustainability actually mean for our people? I think you'll probably want to take this one, Brian.
Yeah, so what it means for the people and what it means to the government is two different things. For our people, and we're conscious of it, they're going to be able to pay and still put a meal on the table or the kids to go to the school. And the vibrancies of life that they need. To the government, basically, if the bill gets paid for, it's sustainable.
There's all sorts of things like that where these costs are coming and it is going to be more expensive for water, and the best thing we can do for our ratepayers is make sure that we keep the price down as much as we possibly can, and that's what this group is about.
One of the things that's come up quite a bit over this long chat about water is that we might lose local control and local say in what happens with our water. How would working together look like and still have that ability to retain local voice?
Yeah, so it's all about the structures that you set up. So we're part of another CCO called Great South, and there's mechanisms such as statements of intent and letters of expectation, which help inform that board of their duties and make sure that the councils who have ownership still have control. So that model would still stay the same. So we would send letters of expectation to the CCO if this is the program of work that we expect in each of our different districts. The board would then go away, figure out how they're going to make all of that work, and then come back to us with that statement of intent to say, this is the work program we're going to do over this period of time. Is this okay with you? So there's still plenty of control, but the difference is that you have independent directors who are specialists in water, so they can make those investment decisions that can really influence the best pathway forward for all of our communities, and that's really valuable.
Yeah, and I think that's an important part is just understanding the role that we have as shareholders. Shareholders appoint the directors, so we will have that shareholder committee where we all have a vote on there. We will appoint directors not based on where they live, not based on who we know, but based on the skills that they bring to it to make good commercial decisions around how to best deliver that service at the most affordable price. So those are important aspects that are going to just change how quickly decisions are made, how quickly work is rolled out, and how they can still be answerable to the shareholder councils.
Is a CCO the first step to privatisation of water?
No, I think the first step to privatisation is not doing water properly. That's when the private sector steps in and can do the job better and more efficiently. That's the first step towards privatisation.
And I think it's always been a red herring scaremonger. Oh, it's privatisation. Not one of us has ever thought this was heading to privatisation, and we would fight. Well, that's just an absolute no. It is not. It's written in the legislation. It keeps coming up. But for goodness sake, there's enough critical issues to deal with without the issues like this that just don't exist.
Yeah, but I think we need to acknowledge it and understand where the community's coming from, because there's been other sectors in New Zealand, electricity being one of those, where there were promises around keeping it public, or expectations around keeping it public, and then it did become, parts of it became privatised. So that can happen, and the main thing is that we understand that can happen, and we look at what the government is doing in its legislation to make sure that it doesn't happen, that these supplies and schemes are monopolies in many cases, and they need to be protected, they need to be kept public, and that's, I'm sure the intention for all of us is how do we make sure that that happens, but we still need the benefits of cost efficiency. So try and get the best of both worlds, where they stay public, but we have much better procurement, much better delivery of service at affordable prices.
And that price aspect comes up a lot, because we know that if we take water services out of councils, it doesn't mean people are paying less, it just means they're getting two bills. What is the view on kind of where water prices are going? If we go to a CCO, are we going to get cheaper prices or more expensive prices? What does it mean for the average?
So there's that real tension, and I think anyone that is hoping that the prices are going to go down, that's not Three Waters, unfortunately. It's a containment of the increase. So in every avenue that we're looking at taking, we're hoping that we take the most affordable, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be less.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to understand we're delivering more, that many of the things we are doing is making sure that we're catching up on that infrastructure deficit that's been there for all too long, that the pipes that have sat in the ground and deteriorated and should have been replaced 10 years ago, 20 years ago, that those things happen. So we're not going to catch up on all of that without prices increasing. But again, it comes down to how do we do that most affordably for our ratepayers to make sure that they are not hitting their pockets more than they will be anyway.
This is ratepayers' money. Ratepayers have paid for the pipes, the plants, the bores. Is this selling off of assets? Who would own them if it was in a CCO?
I think this is the key difference between what Labor are proposing with their Three Waters model and what's been proposed by this government, is that councils will retain that ownership. So with the previous Three Waters, we were giving our assets to an entity that was ultimately run and controlled by central government. That isn't the case. The councils will still retain ownership, but as Brian said before, just an arm removed. But ultimately, we'll still be, the buck will stop with us.
But how do we define an asset, Ben? Because an asset to me is sort of like a car or something that I can sell. But when you have an asset called Three Waters, you've got a litigious and financial risk that just never goes away.
Yeah, we call them liabilities, not assets. But you can't dig them up and sell them. We've tried.
No, but they are assets in the sense that they deliver something that community is lifeblood. You can't get any more fundamental around what some people need than water.
We've had a lot of talk around our council table and with our community about the fact that the status quo doesn't exist anymore, and that we would call it, I guess, an in-house option, and that is one of the options for people. Why don't you think that is a viable option going forward? Why is it not the preferred model for our councils?
I think a lot of our community believes that there's many things in council that we do because we have to, because the private sector won't pick them up and so on, and they don't necessarily believe we're the most efficient about that. But when it comes to an in-house model, Water is exactly that. It's not the most efficient way of delivering it. And so we need to be looking at what is the better way. And the in-house model, as you say, it differs from the status quo, because the status quo is going to change. We're going to have an economic regulator coming in. They're going to be telling us a lot more about what has to be done and what we can charge, and not only don't charge too much, but sometimes it'll be you need to charge more because you're not charging enough to pay for the depreciation for renewing those next lot of pipes, whatever it might be. So there's going to be a loss of control there anyway. So if you put all those different things together, just different aspects, in-house is not the same as status quo. It's not efficient, and there's going to be a loss of control. So let's look at what's the best way of keeping as much control as possible, but making sure we've got the cost affordability.
And if you were to take a linear look at it, let's be fair, it's close. It's close for us between going alone and coming and joining the CCO, and that's what this discussion is about. But every time I look at it, the exposure to risk long term on our own is the critical factor here, because looking at our long-term projections, they're figures that I don't believe that my community can sustain. Whereas together here is a stepping stone in the right direction.
And in that, does it mean if we are joining together with other councils, does your debt become my debt? And does my debt become Gore's debt?
I wish. No, it doesn't. So debt will still be tranched to the individual councils, and that's primarily because in the unlikely event that the CCO does fall over, that debt's got to go somewhere. The Crown's not just going to pick it up, so it always has to be tranched back to those councils. Over time, there might be conversations around price harmonisation and trying to equal it out across the district, but that's way out into the future. We need to first focus on getting the structure right, getting those efficiencies right, and work our way forward from there. But no, Gore residents won't be paying for the beautiful assets in Central Otago, but if you guys want to contribute to our debt, you're more than welcome.
Can the CCO make a profit, and will it pay dividends?
Again, I wish. No, that's been really clear. I think they did design that in Australia, that the water CCO would pay dividends, but nearly none of them actually returned any. So we've made that really clear in all of our discussions, and I'm getting nods that no, there won't be any dividends paid. The water CCO is not looking to make a profit; it's just to do it as affordably there you go, as possible. Yeah.
And what would be the point? We take the money, extra money off the ratepayers to give them a dividend. That makes sense. You know, it's once again is one of those red herrings that are just distracting from the real critical issues that we've got to deal with here. Most councils that are going alone are going to smash into their debt ceiling straight away, and then they're making compromise decisions.
So tell me what is a debt ceiling, and what is, when we talk about going to 280% or 500%, what does that mean?
So it's a proportion of the revenue. So if you're getting 10 million in, 500% is that you can have 50 million of debt. So it's looking at that and making sure that there's sufficient revenue coming in, that you can service that debt, and you can just put up rates and you can borrow more, but still with that ceiling. But equally, as has been said, it's not a target. It's just it gives ability. And I think it's really important for people to understand, why do we have debt? You know, we don't go and borrow money to buy the groceries. And you know, that household analogy is quite good in that this isn't about buying the groceries. This is about buying the next car that's going to take the groceries home, whatever it might be. It's really important that people understand that infrastructure is not cheap. And when you've got to do a water upgrade, it can be $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 per household to do that upgrade. We can't rate people in 1 year for that, and equally it's not fair to rate people for 20 years to get that money together and then to make that upgrade happen. First of all, the prices will just keep leaping ahead as we've experienced, but secondly, there's a lot of those ratepayers won't be there anymore and they won't get the benefit of it, but they've had to pay for it. Loan funding some of that major infrastructure upgrades is really important because it allows the work to happen And the people who benefit from it are the ones who pay for it because they're paying off that loan over time and the interest. So that helps us do that. It also helps us get ahead of where we're at the moment with that infrastructure deficit and actually catch up. We're not going to catch up if we just have to rate people and the rate bills go up so astronomically high, knowing that can actually afford to live there anymore.
I think that's a really good point because that does come up a lot. Why aren't we saving up for something and then doing it? Because it would take so long to save to build this infrastructure that the people who had paid for it would never see the benefit of it.
We're bound by legislation, so consents come up for consents come up when they expire, so we have to deal with those issues at the time, as well as standards that are constantly enforced on us. So that program of work is largely set out already. And we have to address the areas that are growing as well. So a lot of that pre-work is determined. So I don't think that small community is going to get left behind, because if they've got work that needs to be done, it has to be done. There's no other way around it.
It was interesting hearing from a minister the other day talk about the government getting this 30-year asset management plan. It's not, they've made us have them for quite a long time already. So we've got that planning as to what's going to be happening over the next 30 years. We've got our long-term plan, which is the budgeting, and that sets out in more detail what those different projects are going to be. That's where that work will still happen in the future. It'll be probably more in cooperation with the CCO, but that will become part of, as you mentioned before, the letters of expectation from the shareholder committee. So for us, for all of us, we don't want our smaller townships and villages and so on to miss out. They need to be looked after just as much as anyone else. So making sure that they are in the plans, that there's a priority there and we can see when it's going to be done and they can have an understanding of that's really important.
Yeah. And I think the public have to understand that we're not sitting there going, I think it is the consents that trigger the projects, that trigger the costs. And I don't know whether it's Twizel or Mataura or who's next off. That's already been determined 60 years ago or whenever the cycle started. So it's not going to be like, I want Balclutha to get ahead of Mataura. When that consent comes up, we have a legal obligation that we have to go through and do the project and the costs and do it. We don't set the rules here. Wellington sets the rules. We follow. And I think Gary's got a really good point in the fact that around New Zealand, well, we've got a lot of plants that trigger consents. What about the townships that are still septic tanks and on roof water? They're not triggering anything. So there's got to be a lift up everywhere, and it's a huge job. But don't think that the four of us are going to be saying, I want Balclutha before Oamaru. That's not fair. We've got no choice in the blimmin' matter. It's consents.
But I think that's also one of the benefits as well, and certainly the biggest benefit for me around efficiencies is that at the moment, these infrastructure plans that Gary was talking about, they're all separate. So we go out and we go, here's 3 months worth of work, thank you very much. If we join them all up, we can go, cool, 3 months here, and then you're off to Balclutha for another 3 months, another 3 months in Cromwell, and that builds a really good program of work for the people who go out and do this stuff on the ground. Because ultimately, if you're doing, hiring some people for a small amount here, or you've got 2 projects on at the same time in different districts, super inefficient. So if we can line that all up, that's where you really get to see those gains.
And the other one I've never been able to work out, Ben, is that every single council and every single plant does a bespoke, it's like the first time it's ever been produced. We should only have 3 or 4 sewage plants and water plants, and Mataura's getting that one, and away you go, and take all those costs out. And it's this combining and working together that you're going to get the procurement and the touch wood, it's got to happen. But it's going to be a long game.
And I think that's one of the challenges for our communities is we've had to go out with some figures, and they are in the document so that people can get an idea. But there's a lot of pushback, people saying, you don't know what these costs are going to look like in 5 or 10 or 20 years' time. What do you sort of say to, I guess, those people that are worried that we don't have the figures right, that we couldn't possibly know what the future holds for those numbers?
The figures are very conservative, and in fact, too conservative. We're getting told by Department of Internal Affairs and people who should actually know within that department. When these CCOs get set up, you should be expecting 15-20% efficiencies. The numbers are based on 1.5–2% efficiency, so they are very conservative. They're really not allowing for much efficiency overall, but and just another example of the efficiencies that will be gained is that not only will all that duplication of those different teams that were mentioned before, not only will they be reduced down and focused, and the costs reduced, but things like consultants. At the moment, we spend between $500,000 and $1 million on consultants each year for water. If you've got this large team that it doesn't have to have all this duplication, they can employ in, because they've got the scale there, they've got the work there, they can employ in those expertise, those skills that they would otherwise have to go to a consultant for, and that you would go to a consultant for, and you. We would actually employ those people on the team, and that would just keep the costs down on those.
And when we talk about the cost of setting up a CCO, obviously that would come with a cost. And does it come with a bright, shiny new $80 million building? Like, how would it work on the ground?
We've got to be realistic here, Tamer. We're doing our best, and there is going to be costs, but there is going to be savings.
I think coming back to your question before there, Tamer, around whether we're going to have a big flash new building, it's kind of the beauty of the 4 councils we've got at the moment, is there is really no one central location. There isn't a township that makes sense that's right in the middle. I see Brian's about to say Balclutha is, but whether it's Balclutha or Cromwell or Gore or Oamaru, it doesn't make sense to have a head office in any one of those areas. So the ethos that we've taken with this project is we want it to stay, in our areas as much as possible. So same people on the ground. If you've got Sally who's out there fixing pipes today, that'll still be the same after the CCO comes together. It's just about streamlining that upper management and reporting lines and efficiencies in that area, not actually where people are placed. That might be easier said than done, but that's definitely the ethos that we're taking on this.
And parochialism in the past has destroyed opportunities like this. Because everyone wants the jobs in their district. It's much more about what the rates are going to be and how do we keep them affordable. And while you might gain a couple of $1 million of jobs over here, if it's costing your community much more than that, then why do it? So where the head office is, we're not so bothered, although Oamaru would be a good site. But the reality is the people on the ground, as Ben says, that's the important thing. People, our ratepayers knowing that the service will, if anything, get better, not worse, that the people, the response times will be defined and they will be made sure that they are complied with, that the level of work that's being done, the standard of work, that's going to be as good as ever, if not better. And so all of those things will be the same at the local level.
Yep.
One of the things that was a real sticking point under the last government for Three Waters was this idea of co-governance. Is this co-governance by stealth? What does this mean for iwi?
No, it's not. Obviously, we're having conversations with iwi. We understand treaty obligations and we understand the benefits of working with Ngāi Tahu. We've had really good relationships. I think all of our councils have grown that relationship over the last 5 or 10 years. And so there's something that's really beneficial of having them in the tent. As we look at the future of water, we've got to get away from 3-year decision making, the 3-year terms that we have, and we've got to look at a much longer future, and even beyond the 30-year asset management plans and so on that we have. And one of the things that mana whenua bring to the table is that 500-year view. They're making decisions for well into the future, and it's something that we should be doing. We shouldn't be looking at political expediency. It's looking at how we get the most benefit.
And I think that's a really good point, is that it's a distraction from the overall conversation. And we want to make that really clear to our ratepayers that the councils will still own this, they'll still have the decision making in terms of what work actually gets done. Yes, we will be talking to iwi, but actually the control stays with councils.
And I think it's important to keep that discussion with iwi going. When resource consents are applied for, they go through a process if it's with the regional council. The regional council confers with Ōkaha in our area, the company that Southern Runaka set up to help with consenting and that sort of thing. They do have a responsibility and some power in this whole situation, and the best way to make sure that we look after our people is by looking after those people as well, that we have them in the tent, that we have good conversations right along the way, that they understand our problems, we understand theirs. Those are all really mutually beneficial things, and I feel a personal obligation to be doing those sorts of things, but even for those who don't, just understanding the benefits that actually come from making sure that we are around the table, that we're having those conversations is really important.
And I guess getting into the nuts and bolts of how it would work, I've got a leaking water Toby in Naseby. I ring the hotline. Am I going to get someone that even knows where Naseby is? How will I see that service retained that people enjoy now?
The boots are going to be on the ground. The person that's probably fixing your Toby will be the same person, like Ben said before. I would imagine the top echelon could change, but the boots on the ground are going to stay the boots on the ground. The actual details around the interaction between, you ring and you ask, or even the billing. Okay, there's going to be a transition and we're going to work through those details, but these are one of the realities that we're going to have to face. It's the conversation that was had, all the staff are going to move to Christchurch. Well, how ridiculous. No, they're not. Please have some trust in us. I know that that's something that might really jangle the nerves of some people, but do you really think that we're not going to maintain the boots on the ground and streamline those service delivery efficiencies? We have to. That's the game.
And I think it builds redundancy in the network as well, right? Is that if all of your operators are out doing other jobs, then you can pull, for us, we just pull on Clutha because we're working with them anyway. Someone could drive across, and it actually helps build redundancy in that system rather than the opposite of going, all of your operators are out, living in their life in Central Otago. There's no one there to fix it. That's not the case at all.
Yeah, when you think of it, our head depot is probably 120 or 30 kilometres away, whereas yours would be only 30 or odd over to Tapanui. So, we've put arbitrary lines on a map 100 years ago, and now we're trying to call them efficient. No, they're not.
I think it's also important when you think about like civil defence as well. We're on the Matoda, you guys are on the Clutha. The likelihood, touch wood, is pretty low of those both flooding at the same time. So it's that, again, redundancy of the network of being able to help each other out to send resources where they're needed.
One of the things that's come up a couple of times is that this is a fait accompli, a sham consultation. We've already made our decisions.
Go and tell my councillors that.
Yeah. What do you guys think is the future? We've called this a consultation. It's also an information and an engagement. We're trying to put as much information out there as possible. Has your council already made the decision about what this is going to look like, formally or not?
Our council hasn't, and there's still some different views around the table, which is absolutely understandable, and it's good for democracy. I have been critical of the consultation required for this because many of us have spent quite a long time talking about water, becoming subject experts in the matter, and it is very, very complex, and there's a whole lot of different moving parts, and it's taken a long time to understand as many of them as we have, and take my hat off to our relative newbies of getting up to speed as quickly as you have, because there is so much there. And it's really difficult to expect our community can understand all of those different aspects just by reading through a document. And that's if they do read the document. Some of them will go straight to the submission, and they'll fill out the submission and they'll give their view on it. So it's difficult for me to say, yes, this is a true consultation where everything will be taken and we will enact everything that people say, because we simply can't. At the end of the day, I'm here to work on the best interests of my community, and if that's to make sure that they get the best quality service at the most efficient price, then I feel bound to do that. Now, it doesn't mean that I won't be listening to everyone's view. I will be. There'll be some elements in there that that maybe haven't been considered. There'll be elements in there where it actually suggests to me that actually we need to tell our community more about this part of the reform. So there will be some things that come through from that. It's not that those submissions will be ignored. It is simply acknowledging that at the moment, a joint CCO with willing partners is going to deliver the best service that we can at the best price, and that's where I'm at. And I'd like to say, convince me otherwise, but none of the evidence that I've seen in the past, none of the evidence I'm seeing now is coming close to that. And in fact, we've got one person who's taken out a full-page ad comparing the CCO proposal with Wellington Water. Wellington Water is a disaster. It's like, have we learnt anything from that? Yes, we've learnt a heck of a lot. Wellington Water is actually moving towards a model which is more like what we're actually trying to put together. So, there's all of those things where people will make a decision based on some misinformation like that, because we're not going to be following Wellington Water. We will be learning from it, and we'll be making sure that we're basing our model on a successful model, not on one that caused a lot more inefficiency and cost.
Because can I just quickly touch on the Wellington Water model, because it's come up in my community a fair bit as well. So the difference between what we're proposing and what Wellington Water is they're actually two different types of CCO. So Wellington Water is a management CCO. What that means is that the Wellington Council still are the rating body for that organisation. So what's different to what we're proposing is that the CCO that is proposed you'll get a waters bill, so they'll do the charging. So that eliminates the risk that has ultimately led to that, the inefficiencies you see in Wellington Water, of they go, we need 14% more, and then the council turns around and goes, well, we're giving you 5%. Actually, that's a non-negotiable. We're talking about water assets here, and that's where that underfunding has happened and ultimately led to the disaster there. I think, touching on your point, Gary, it's like a fire hydrant of information. Like and excuse the pun, but it really is. There's so much information, and this is just the best option that we've seen. And we've talked about it before, it's only slightly better than the other options, but it is better at the end of the day. And I think if we can be convinced, by our communities that there is a better option out there, then we've got to take that into consideration. Also, for us looking at trying to get re-elected, it is an election year. So it's quite a big gamble to take all of the information from your community if there's strong pushback and go, you know what, we're actually not going to do that. It makes it pretty tricky come election time. But ultimately we've got to do what's best for our communities as well. So we'll take all of the information on board, we'll put into a big mixing pot, and that's how we make all of our decisions.
And in this confusion, we had an obligation to give clear messaging. Like Ben said, yeah, it's tight, but in my heart, I do believe that just ahead is what we are doing. But as the tension comes through, and there is tension right at the moment, I'm feeling it from the councillors, and I can't say which way we're going to go. I do not know. But when I listen to the initial questioning that's coming out of my community, like you said, just stop. That's not our reality. So telling me to stop if you just have a wee think about it. We're under such restraint and such a tight road that we've got to go, and telling us to do something that is either illegal or impossible. But please, have a look as best you can at the critical arguments that we're looking at, and come back articulate your arguments with the facts that we are facing.
And I think that's been some of the challenge for us in our council, and I'm sure it's the same for you, is that we've read thousands and thousands of pages of information and reports and financials over the last, 3, 5, 20 years, and people are asking for it to be summarised into a text message form or a Facebook comment. The reality is we just can't.
Those numbers keep changing, right, as well, as standards change and as DIA says to be more efficient, increase our money. Like I can see why it's confusing for communities, and we fully understand that, but we've got to find a better way of doing things.
Talking about the time frame and going forward from here, obviously the consultation period is open now until the 6th of June when it will close. By the 15th of July, all our councils will have made a decision about whether the CCO remains the preferred option or whether they're out. And that might have implications for the other councils as well. But we also recognise that by the 3rd of September, we need to have our water service delivery plan with the government. And that's going to have to say how your council is going to deliver waters into the future.
Which is 5 weeks away from an election. Good on you.
And I think that's really important to highlight, because we've got a whole lot of questions being like, why don't you just wait till after the election? Not our choice. I think if it was up to any of us, certainly for you two, you'd wait till after the election.
No, I want this sorted before, Ben.
Well, there you go. I mean, I think, I think we all have different opinions on when we should do this, but we don't have a choice. Government has said 3rd of September, that's it. Make a decision by then.
Remember, it was really tight when Timaru first came into the discussions and we asked the minister, hey, just a week, 2 weeks, anything. There wasn't a day in the system.
No, the minister's been clear about no more, no extra time.
And I think the government's been very deliberate about getting it done before the election, because there will be, the usual 20, 30% turnover, maybe 50% in some cases. And there'll be a whole lot of people come on to councils that haven't been through all of this learning and so on. So very difficult to expect that they would then make a decision anytime soon after that, or be in a position to be able to make a decision. So very deliberate about that. Possibly didn't give as much thought to, actually there's a whole lot of campaign mode stuff happening at that time, and that this decision will feed into campaigns, and I think that's definitely an unavoidable and undesirable side effect of the whole timeline that we've got.
Ben, thoughts from you, final wrap-ups?
Final wrap-ups, just really encourage people to read through the information if this is something of interest to you. It affects everyone who has water. Even if you're in the rural areas, it'll affect you as well. So please read through the documentation, and if you feel like it, submit as well, give us your information, build your arguments. We really want to hear from you. We want to take the whole community on with this journey with us. So please, yes, have a look and let us know what you think.
Gary?
Yeah, I think absolutely concur with that. That people do take the time to go through, read all of the information, or as much of the information as they can, be as informed as they can, and give us their views. And not just what they want, but why, because that's helpful for us in making whatever decision we make. But I still come back to, back in late October 2022, when we had our swearing-in ceremony, I swore an oath to my community that I would act in their best interests, and that's what I'll be doing. And I want to be informed by their comments, and I will make the best decision that I can, and I'm sure every member of our council will be doing the same.
Brian?
Unavoidably, Three Waters will be the political decision of our lifetimes, and until it's solved, the ratepayers are going to keep on paying and paying. It's behoveth on us to find that solution, and yet in a lot of ways, I don't know if the true solution is there to be found. If it was there to be found, how come one of the 67 councils hasn't done it to date? So we're right in the middle of it, and like Gary said, just as long as we keep on going back to that one thing, keep fighting for your ratepayers, keep trying to get the best. And I know that if the public were half as frustrated with it as I am, there'd be riots. But that's our reality, and this is a chance. And I will say that, thank goodness, after all these years, I've come down to working with people I can trust. We haven't fallen out with each other, and there's hope for the future from this group. So thanks, team. It's been good working with you.
I guess for me, the playing field has changed. When we first started delivering water as the councils that we now are, the game has changed completely. The expectations of people have changed, the expectations of the government have changed. We need to keep up, and like you pointed out, Gary, we've all taken an oath to do the best for our individual districts, and as Brian highlighted, so long as everybody is benefiting, that means my ratepayers are benefiting as well, and we want to benefit not just for the next 3 years, into that longer term view. So hopefully we will see a lot of submissions coming through and ideas if we haven't caught everything. But I guess thanks very much to everybody who's taken the time to watch our little chat show, and safe travels home again.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Kia ora, Kate.
Sugar sweet.